أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome to Shab-e-Jumah program. Inshallah, we'll start with the recitation of Surah Yasin, followed by Dua Kumail and Majlis for the Eisal-e-Thawab of Marhuma Sukaina Dhala. We just ask all of you to please recite Surah Fatiha for Marhuma Sukaina Dhala, as well as the following Marhumin: Marhum Mohsin Sher Ali Ladak and Marhum Bashir Mir Ali. These two Marhumin passed away on Tuesday and today. So please recite Surah Fatiha for all of these marhumin, as well as your own marhumin. Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim ghayril maghdubi alayhim wala ad-dallin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Inshallah, I would request Brother Mazahir Dhala to go ahead and start us off with the recitation of Surah Yasin.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كما أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة وأحييناها وأخرجنا منها هبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا ونطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في السور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم أزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخنا على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول ولا الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند مهترون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناهم من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Ahsantum, jazakumullah khair. Once again, a reminder that we are commemorating the Eisal-e-Thawab Majlis for mother of brother Mazahir, Marhuma Sukana Thala. Please keep her in your du'as. At this point, I would request Brother Ghulam Haider to continue the program with the recitation of Dua Kumail. Please open your video as well, inshallah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعزمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعزم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عزم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا، ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرعت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عزم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفعي بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك ألا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي. هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد سنك اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك طائعة وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا رب، وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثه يسير بقاؤه قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لعليم العذاب والشدة أم لطول البلاء ومدتي، فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك، وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك، أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجائي عفوك. فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادين أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتي، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيتي، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي، فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يهرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم الضعف؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات، ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك، فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك، وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك، لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدأ وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما، أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغضبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررته وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أزهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزله أو إحسان تفضله أو بر تنشره أو رزق تبسطه أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك الرزق، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rab, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rab, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rabbi, Ya Rab. أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جوارحي واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين واشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارده ومن كادني فقده واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة من وأخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك وعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وأقلني أثرتي واغفر زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة فإليك يا رب نسبت وجهي وإليك يا رب مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقام يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Ahsantum, Jazakumullah for the beautiful recitation. As announced, this is an Eisal-e-Thawab Majlis, and inshallah we will be commemorating this majlis and dedicating it, the thawab of it, to Marhuma Sukana Dalla. Before we begin, a request for you to recite a Surah Fatiha for Marhuma Sukana Dalla, as well as two other marhumin, Marhum Mohsen Sher Ali Larak and Marhum Bashir Mir Ali, both of whom just passed away in the last couple of days. Please recite a Surah Fatiha and 3 times Surah Ikhlas for both of these marhumin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Siratal ladzina an'amta 'alayhim ghayril maghdubi 'alayhim waladdallin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. Inshallah, to start off the majlis, we'll have a Salaam recited by Brother Jafar Hussain, and I would request him to start us off with the Salaam, followed by another Salaam, and inshallah the majlis, followed by Ziyarat-e-Warisa.
ایک بلند تر صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد. اندھیر ہوا فاطمہ زہرا نے قضا کی. اندھیر ہوا فاطمہ زہرا نے قضا کی. کھیتی ہوئی برباد رسول دو سرا کی. اندھیر ہوا فاطمہ. بازار کے لوگوں نے چراغوں کو بجھایا. بازار کے لوگوں نے چراغوں کو بجھایا. میت جو چلی بنت رسول دو سرا کی. اندھیر ہوا فاطمہ. تا عرش گئے زینب و کلثوم کے نالے. تا عرش گئے زینب و کلثوم کے نالے. آثار قیامت ہوئے اس طرح بکا کی. اندھیر ہوا فاطمہ. یا فاطمہ کہہ کہ جو روتا ہے زمانہ. یا فاطمہ کہہ کہ جو روتا ہے زمانہ. تربت ہیلی جاتی ہے رسول دو سرا کی. اندھیر ہوا فاطمہ. حسنین اٹھائے ہوئے ہیں ماں کا جنازہ. حسنین اٹھائے ہوئے ہیں ماں کا جنازہ. اور بیٹیاں کہتی ہیں دہائی ہے خدا کی. اندھیر ہوا فاطمہ زہرا نے قضا کی، کھیتی ہوئی برباد رسول دو سرا کی، اندھیر ہوا فاطمہ زہرا نے قضا کی۔
Jazakallah for that recitation. That was Jafar Hussain. And now I would request Brother Shab-e-Ali to recite another Salaam on the request of Mazahir Dala.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔ مکر شہ نے کہا لے اے سکینہ الوداع، بابا تیرا مرنے چلا، لے اے سکینہ الوداع، بائے گلے میں ڈال دے اور منہ پہ منہ رکھ دے میرے، بائیں گلے میں ڈال دے اور منہ پہ منہ رکھ دے میرے، بابا تیرا رن کو چلا، لے اے سکینہ الوداع، اب ہم کہاں اور تم کہاں، دیکھو گی کیا کیا خاریاں، اب ہم کہاں اور تم کہاں، دیکھو گی کیا کیا خاریاں، مل لے گلے اے میری جان، لے اے سکینہ الوداع، حالت ہے اب کرنا جری، بابا نہ کہنا ہر گئی، حالت ہے اب کرنا جری، بابا نہ کہنا ہر گئی، بن باپ کی تو ہو چکی، لے اے سکینہ الوداع، ظالم جو چھینے بالیاں، اور کرتا ہو لو ظالم جو چھینے بالیاں اور کرتا ہو لو شکوہ نہ لانا بر زبان لے اے سکینہ الوداع گزرے جو کچھ رنگ جو مہن اے میری پیاری گل بدن گزرے جو کچھ رنگ جو مہن اے میری پیاری گل بدن چھوٹے نہ دادی کے چلن لے اے سکینہ الوداع لکھا تیری تقدیر کا اس سن میں میری محل کا داغے بدر تجھ کو ملے اے سکینہ الوداع اونچوں مکر شہ نے کہا لے اے سکینہ الوداع محمد وآل محمد صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Santam Jazakumullah. Inshallah, after the Majlis, we will have the recitation of Ziyarat-e-Warith by Zishan Maulidina. Rahmallahu man qara'a Surat al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين صلى الله عليه وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي قصرت عن رؤيته أبصار الناظرين وعجزت عن نعته أوهام الواصفين الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين وأبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن يمسسكم قرح فقد مس القوم قرح مثله وتلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس وليعلم الله الذين آمنوا ويتخذ منكم شهداء والله لا يحب الظالمين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. As announced before, this is an Eisal-e-Thawab Majlis to commemorate the wafat of Marhuma Sukaina Dhala, for whom Surah Yasin was recited. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to elevate the status of Marhuma, give her the place in the Jivar of Masumin alayhi wassalatu wassalam. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to bestow sabr and patience to the bereaved family. The ayah which I chose for tonight's Majlis Aza is from chapter number 3, Surah Al-Imran, ayat number 140, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us by saying, In yamsaskum qarhun. The background of this ayah is the partial loss that was suffered by Muslimin in the battle of Uhud. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while addressing the Muslimin, He says, if wounds afflict you in this battle of Uhud, like the wounds that already afflicted those in the battle of Badr, such as your enemies. He said, we have made people pass through difficult turns of history, the vicissitude of day and night, and the difficulties that come and go. So this is your turn in history to face the difficulty. There will be victories and there will be losses, so that Allah may ascertain those who have faith, and that He may take martyrs, or some have translated this as shuhada, as the witnesses from among you. And Allah does not like the wrongdoers. As I mentioned, this ayah is consoling the hearts of Muslims after the battle of Uhud, that if you suffered, your enemies also suffered. And if you didn't come out victorious today, your enemies were also not victorious yesterday. Therefore, show forbearance in front of difficult times. There are always changes taking place in people as well as in the places around us. Just wanted to make sure that you guys can hear my sound. Is my voice? Yes, I guess it is. Okay. So there's always changes that are taking place in people as well as in places around us. Individually, sometimes there are changes that are happening in us as individuals. There was a time maybe we were poor, then we became rich, or vice versa. There are times when we are sad and we're happy. In fact, this is one thing which is probably happens multiple times in a day. Sometimes you're healthy and sometimes you're sick. And aside from these changes, the bigger changes that take place when we were kids, then we grew older, became adults, then we became elderly. These changes serve as a constant reminder that there is someone running all of the affairs, who has complete control over our lives and this universe around us. And that's why you find in the kalam of Maulana Muttaqiyan Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam, who said, Araftullaha bifaskhil azaim wa naqdil himam. I recognized God through revoking the determinations and breaking the intentions. When my azaim, my things that I wanted to accomplish, my plans, those things which I was determined to do, they were revoked. And those intentions that I had made, naqd himam, by breaking of those intentions and my plans that did not take place, araftullah, I was able to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How so? Said if it was all in my hand, then I would have gone ahead with all of these things. But there was someone else who was planning things for me. I'm not the only planner. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the supreme planner for everything. So this is at the individual level. Then you look at socially, from the aspect of jama'at, tajammu, or people around us. We see the conditions of nations change in front of our eyes. Sometimes a nation rules over us. Sometimes a different nation is ruling over us. Sometimes a noble family has authority over us. Sometimes immoral people are, have become our leaders and our rulers. Sometimes believers are in power. Other times unbelievers are in power. All of these are to let us ponder and let us think that there are lessons from it that could be derived and could be learned. When night comes, we realize the importance of the day. Isn't that the case? The existence of evil people distinguishes the presence of good people. And we also are able to appreciate the wujud of good people and the wujud and the existence of goodness when we see evil all around us. If immoral people aren't in power sometimes, or they are in power sometimes, or vice versa, such as the Umayyad dynasty and the Abbasid dynasty, we won't be able to understand the leadership of the noble people. That's why this maqula says, تُعْرَفُ الْأَشْيَاء بِأَضْدَادِهَا, or الْأَشْيَاءُ تُعْرَفُ بِأَضْدَادِهَا. That things are understood with their opposites. That when you're able to compare their opposite forces, only then you're able to fully recognize and understand the goodness, for example, in this case, if there didn't exist any evil. Allah sent many anbiya to us. He sent many prophets to us. And they all had one same objective. But few of those anbiya were very poor. And some of those anbiya were very rich. And this was the plan of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'll give you an example of a poor Nabi, nonetheless a Nabi. And I'll give you an example of a rich Nabi, both from, of course, Quran. Prophet Ibrahim is a prime example of a Nabi who was very poor. You go ahead and read in Qasasul Anbiya, the places where the history of different Anbiya has been mentioned. Because, there's a discussion in Quran which does not go in too much detail, but shows to an extent the lifestyle of the Nabi. But then in the Riwayat of Masumin, where these qasas, these stories have emerged, then we find that what these prophets went through. So then, when you read the story of Hazrat Ibrahim ﷺ, you find Nimrud is in power. And Prophet Ibrahim was amongst his people, Ra'aya. He was so poor that once a guest comes to his house and he had nothing to offer the guest. Just imagine, have nothing for yourself and of course not for anything for your guest. That's the life of a Nabi. It's a prime example of a life of how awliya Allah spend their lives. Later, Hazrat Ibrahim ﷺ picks up a bag and tells his wife Sarah that he will get some flour from a friend. So he walks in the desert, in the jungle. When he couldn't find, of course, he was just saying that I will go to my friend, but he couldn't. He goes to a desert and fills this bag with desert sand and brings it back home. And then he leaves it at a corner so that at least, she sees that he has brought something back. And then he goes out. When he comes back later that night, he sees that the meal was prepared and ready. The bread was there. So he right away asked, where did you get all this flour from that you were able to cook these bread? She said, that bag of flour that you brought. I have never seen a flour such good quality before. And the one that you had brought from your friend's house, that's the one. I cooked these bread because of that. Hazrat Ibrahim looked up. He thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he said, you're a friend who never strands his friends. And that's why he got the title of Khalilullah, a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there was a task that was ahead of him. Allah asked him to go stand against Nimrud. He breaks all the idols. He goes and says, La ilaha illallah. O Nimrud, you're not a god. Rather, Allah is your Khaliq and the Khaliq of everyone else. Of course, Nimrud and his people were, raged by what audacity Hazrat Ibrahim was showing. and plus the damage that he had already caused to their idols. He's alone, no attorney there, no support there. He has been handed a death penalty. He said, take this man into custody and we will kill him. And that was the final decision. He embraces it wholeheartedly. He might be thinking, the one who gave death penalty doesn't control death. Why should I fear? And the one in whose hands is death and life, if he wishes for me to die, then no one can stop him. Quran says, فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَجَلُهُمْ لَا يَسْتَأْخِرُونَ سَاعَةً وَلَا يَسْتَقْدِمُونَ. If their ajal has come, that means their death and final abode has appeared to them, and their final destiny is now in front of them. لا يستأخرون ساعة. Nothing will delay it an hour. ولا يستقدمون. And nothing will make it, come quicker. In riwayat, it is mentioned that Ra'fa bint Namrud's daughter, who was looking at the fire that was built for Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi in which he would be thrown into. And he was thrown into that fire. She was looking from above this balcony of maybe their palace. She saw Ibrahim alayhi sitting in the midst of the fire, like he's sitting in a beautiful, lawn or beautiful bagh, and, where there are fruits and there are birds chirping and there are trees around. And his musalla, the place of his ibadat, right in front of him. And he's busy doing the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he's worshipping him. Is it not fire? Is it not supposed to burn? But the ayat of Quran says, Ya naru, kuni bardan wa salama ala Ibrahim. O fire, be cool and sound for Ibrahim. This fire is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Hazrat Ibrahim responded to Ra'fa, this fire is obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not your father. This was the story of a poor Nabi who stood up against the biggest of the evils. Of course, the remaining of the story is where Jibreel alayhi wasalam asks Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are you going to let him burn like this? Should I go and rescue him? Allah says, go if you want to. See if he accepts it. When he comes, of course, Hazrat Ibrahim rejected it, saying that the one who's my Khalil, if he wishes for me to survive, then I will live. If he wishes for me to die, then I will die in it. I don't need your help. I already have the help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the example of a poor Nabi who stood up against the biggest evil of his time. Now let's examine the story of a rich Nabi. By that I mean Prophet Sulaiman. Allah sent both examples so that people of different ranks have no excuse whatsoever. And all of the examples that fits them is in front of them so that they can imitate. When you're rich, don't act like Fir'aun and Nimrud. When you're poor, don't act like Iblis. So both examples are there for you to follow. So, well, I'm poor, how can I help? What can I do? Nothing could come up from me. No, be like Ibrahim alayhi wasalam. And when you're rich, you try to hide behind excuses so that you don't, go ahead and contradict someone else, someone who's your counterpart, for example. So no, don't be like Fir'aun and Haman and all of these who are the examples. Don't be like Fir'aun and don't be like Nimrud. So Prophet Sulaiman made a dua. His dua is in Quran. And what a dua is this? He said, قَالَ رَبِّ اغْفِرْ لِي وَهَبْ لِي مُلْكًا لَا يَنْبَغِي لِعَهَدٍ مِّن بَعْدِي. O Allah, forgive me and grant me a kingdom that will befit no one, or that will not befit anyone except me. That means he's requesting a kingdom likes of which has never been seen before, and the likes of which will never be seen again. That's what he asked from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah, of course, fulfilled his demand. So Allah granted him authority over people, over jinns, over animals, over birds, over insects. as well as the winds. They were all in his control. And all of this is proven through the ayat of Quran. He would speak to the animals in their tongue. That we was taught the mantiq and the speech of the birds. And of course, where I'm leading to is that famous story of the bird which went missing. How was that story come about? Riwayat mentioned that every morning a pair of each bird family would spread their wings and hover over Prophet Sulaiman in that assembly, keeping a constant shade from the sun upon him. When one day he could see that the sun rays are making its way through this flock of birds, he realized that one of the birds was missing. He realized that this hudhud or hoopoe was missing from amongst the ranks of the birds. وَتَفَقَّدَ الطَّيْرَ فَقَالَ مَا لِي لَا أَرَى الْهُدْهُدَ أَمْ كَانَ مِنَ الْغَائِبِينَ. When the birds, he said, what is it that I do not see this hudhud? Why is he not here? And then he said, if he comes, if he does not have an excuse, then he will be punished, and so on and so forth. When the bird returned, he explained the reason that he was left behind and he could not make it to the assembly. He said, I went flying over Mulk-e-Saba, and I saw this queen of Sheba, Bilqis, her name was, وَجَدْتُهَا وَقَوْمَهَا يَسْجُدُونَ لِلشَّمْسِ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. That I saw her and her people doing sajda to the sun and not to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet Sulaiman does not trust him. He said, Sananzur asadaqtam kunta min al-kadhibin. We'll see. We shall see, actually. Sananzur is we shall see whether you're truthful or if you are of the liars. You're just making it up because you were missing and you're afraid of my wrath. He said, take my letter and deliver it to them. Then draw away from them and observe what response they return. And so Hazrat Sulaiman writes this letter. That's why in this surah you have Bismillah twice in Surah Namal. Innahu min Sulaiman wa innahu Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So while there are 114 surahs in Quran, Surah Tawbah does not have a Bismillah. So you would say, well, there are 113 Bismillahs. No. There are two Bismillahs in this surah. One in the beginning and one ayat number 30. وَإِنَّهُ مِن Sulaiman. This is from Sulaiman. وَإِنَّهُ Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And then he writes, Allah ta'alu alayya wa atuni muslimin. Do not defy me and come to me in submission. This was the letter that Hazrat Sulaiman sent. Right away, this bird was responsible for delivering this letter, so he delivers it in a way, and then he sticks around. Queen of Sheba, she reads the letter. She's terrified at once. She calls the council and to consult with the elite forces. Ayat of Quran says, she said, oh, members of the elite, give me your opinion concerning my matter. They say, we are a powerful nation and we possess a great might. But it is up to you, whatever you command, because you're the queen. She said, I really want to avoid confrontation. She said, setting a fire is easy, but extinguishing the fire is very difficult. Similarly, starting a war might be easy for us, but facing the dark consequences of war will be difficult. So I've decided to send some gifts to them. See what they say. Inni mursilatun ilayhim bihadiyatin. Let's send some gifts before we go to war with them. So she sent animals laden with gold and silver to Hazrat Sulaiman. And then you find this piece in Riwayat as well, that along with this gold that she sent as the gift, she sent a set of questions to test if Hazrat Sulaiman was Nabi of Allah or not. That if he is the Nabi, then we will submit to him that he's saying. But if he's not a Nabi, then of course we'll go to war against him. Remember Mubahala, what the Christians did? Asqaf Azam said the same thing. That if this is Nabi of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and if he's true in his claims, then don't do mubahala with him. And the indication of that will be that he will not come with force. He would come with the closest of his companions or his people or family even. To the surprise, the Rasulullah comes with nisa'ana, abna'ana wa anfusana. He comes bringing Janabe Amirul Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi wasalam, Bibi Fatmatul Zahra salamullah alayha, and her two kids, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. And when they see the scene from far distant, right away they say, don't go to Mubahila with this group of people. He's true in his claim that he's the Nabi, because nobody puts their family in harm's way. The fact that he's bringing the family shows that he's truthful in what he's claiming to be, and that is the Nabi of Allah. So Queen of Sheba says the same thing. We'll test. If he's a Nabi, we'll submit. But if he's a liar, then we'll definitely go to war against him. So what were these questions? Very unusual things. They sent 100 boys and girls who were same age, they looked the same, wearing the same dresses, to see if he can recognize them without having spoken to them, so that he's able to distinguish between the boys and the girls. Then they also sent a cane, asa, the asl of which was unknown. The top and the bottom was unknown. Which one would be a top, which one would be the bottom. So let's see if you can figure that out. And then they sent a door saying, make a hole in this door without using any metal object. Of course, remember, that's the time. Today you say, well, I can do that even without using a metal object. I can, poke a hole in a door made of wood, for example. But back in the day. Number 4, pierce a thread through a difficult gem. There was a gem, like a tasbih that we have, right? But a bigger gem that we want to pierce a thread through it. Let's see if you can do that. And sent a bottle to fill a water which is neither from heaven nor from the earth. Now the bird who delivered this letter, he heard all of these conditions and he flew back to Hazrat Sulaiman. Now while the animals are being laden with all the gold and this message is being carried with the people, the bird flies back, instantly comes and informs Hazrat Sulaiman of what they're planning on doing. Hazrat Sulaiman ordered to build mansions and palaces and forts entirely made of gold, and along with them stables of animal and horses completely done with gold bricks. Even the gutters where the horses' waste would pass through were made of gold. Everything was ready before the representatives of Bilqis arrived. Hazrat Sulaiman sat on his throne. When they arrived, they saw gold everywhere. Remember, they're bringing gold as gifts. They even see the stables, where the horses are, their waste is going through these gutters, which are made of gold. And then they look at their own gold and silver that they have brought as gifts. They left all of their gifts outside, saying, should we bring this? A country which has so much wealth that their palaces are made of gold, their stables are made of gold, their horses are walking on the bricks made of gold. You think our gifts of gold will be of any use? So they left all of their gifts outside. As soon as they entered, Hazrat Sulaiman ordered, give them water to wash themselves, because they've arrived from a long journey. As soon as they were given the water, of course, boys, they wash themselves in a certain way, and the girls, they wash themselves in a certain way. That's also, even when it comes to performing the wudu, there's slight differences. That when you're washing the hand, you wash from the outside for the boys, and the girls from the inside. But of course, you have to wash the entire hand from elbow to the fingers. So when they were given the water to wash themselves, each gender washed it differently, which was able to distinguish between them and from one another. So Hazrat Sulaiman right away ordered, take the boys into this room or this side and take the girls to this side. So they were able to separate them. That was the first indication. They gave him this asa, this cane. He threw it in the sky, and the side upon which it landed, he said that is the original side and the top, because that has to be heavy. Of course, keeping in mind how people used to construct things back in the day. He put the door on his throne. Remember, they asked him to poke a hole through this door without using any metal object. And he ordered one of the termites to go ahead and do the job. The termite went to the job, created a hole, and he didn't even have to use any metal. Then they gave them that gem, that piece of stone that they had brought, saying we can run a thread through it because it's so, there's so many sides to it or holes to it that it's difficult. He ordered one of the insects to take this thread and run through it, because of course he had command over all of these hasharat. Did that. And lastly, water, which is neither from heaven or earth. He made a horse run around so much that when it started sweating, he said, collect this sweat of this horse and tell him that this is neither from this land, this earth, or the hereafter, or from the heavens. He then ordered the throne of Queen of Sheba to be delivered before they arrived. He said, قال الذي عنده علم من الكتاب أنا آتيك به قبل أن يرتد إليك طرفك. So this is the deputy of Hazrat Sulaiman, Asif ibn Barkhia, who's able to perform this miracle of delivering a physical object, which is still to this day humans are unable to do. Yeah, you might be able to carry something physical over the distance of 1,500 miles. Remember, Yemen and Hazrat Sulaiman is in Palestine, about a 1,500-mile distance between the two places. We can carry objects from one place to another, but it takes time. But to carry the throne of Bilqis 1,500 miles in a blink of an eye still as a miracle, could not be done without a miracle. And someone was able to perform it. Asif ibn Barkhia is the name of that person who was the deputy of Hazrat Sulaiman. Could Hazrat Sulaiman not do this himself? Of course he could. But he wants to show that my vicegerent or my successor or my deputy possesses this sort of ilm, which is similar to mine. So don't go ahead and start selecting your vicegerents and my successors based on your own whims. And when it was asked by Imam, what was the ilm that Asif ibn Barkhia had that he was able to perform this miracle? Imam said, Quran says, indahu ilmun min al-kitab. He had the ilm from the book. And that refers to Asma' Azam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam said he had the ilm of one of the Isma' Azam of Allah, of the 73 names of Asma' Azam. And then Imam said, we possess 72 out of 73 Asma' Azam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just imagine when Asif ibn Barkhia is able to perform this miracle. By knowing one name, what would Masumin be able to do? This was the account of Nabi, who was a very rich Nabi. And so the accounts of two Anbiya, one very rich and the other one very poor. What is the conclusion that I'm trying to draw over here, that I've taken half hour of yours in this Eisal-e-Thawab Majlis? The death of the Anbiya. The death is something which is inevitable, comes upon everyone. There's no farar from death. No one can run away from maut. Maut is barhaq. Remember, that's the reason we recite this talqeen. Inna sa'ata atiyatun la rayba fiha. Wal mautu haqqun. Wal naru haqqun. Wal mizanu haqqun. The death is haqq. It'll come. So when the angel of death came to Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he said to him that, I've come to take your soul. Hazrat Ibrahim responded by saying, does a friend wish for the death of the friend? Because he's Khalilullah, right? Malakul Maut returned. Allah sent him again and said these words to Ibrahim. Does a friend not want to meet his beloved? Hazrat Ibrahim embraced the death. That is the death of a poor Nabi. I keep on mentioning there's a reason. When the angel of death came to Hazrat Musa alayhi salam to take his soul, I'll mention about Hazrat Sulaiman later. Prophet Musa alayhi salam said, what do you Or where do you intend to extract my soul from? It's like extracting the soul, naz'ul, ruh. This ruh is extracted from the body. And Imam mentions, imagine a silky cloth which is then dragged between the bushes and the thorns. That's how the soul is taken out of the body. So Hazrat Musa said to him, where do you intend on extracting it from? He said, I'll do it from your hands. Hazrat Musa said, these are the hands upon which I carried Torah. He said, okay, I'll do it from your feet. He said, these are the feet that I walked and up to the mount of Tur to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, I'll take it from your eyes. He said, this is the eye which witnessed the jalal of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I said, oh Allah, I want to see you, he said, lan tarani, and then look over toward the tree. He said, okay, I'll take it from your tongue. He said, this is the tongue I spoke to with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why he's known as what? Kalimullah. You will recite in Ziyarat-e-Warith. The angel returned. He gave up. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him that don't worry about it. When he requests himself to be taken by himself, then take his soul. One day, Hazrat Musa was walking by a place. He saw a man digging the grave. Riwayat mentioned this was actually the angel of death. Hazrat Musa asked him, what are you doing? He said, I'm digging a grave for someone. He said, I can help you. He said, sure. He said, how big is the grave you want to be? How big is the person? He said, well, about your height, about your length. So Hazrat Musa helped him as far as the size and everything concerned. And then just to make sure that it is enough, he laid down inside the grave. When he laid down inside the grave, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed him and opened the doors of paradise for Hazrat Musa. Hazrat Musa is laying in this grave and he sees the doors of heaven open upon him. He said, oh Allah, take me there. I don't want to return to this world. Right away, the angel of death came and he was already there. He took the soul of Hazrat Musa alayhi wasalam. So he himself asked for it. After seeing this, Riwayat mentioned that mu'min also sees similar things. It's not a difficult process for a mu'min. When you see ma'asumeen waiting for you, when you see Malakul Maut standing with adab, taking your soul. And that's how a mu'min leaves this world. Now look at the death of Hazrat Sulaiman. In our stories, the rich Nabi. Prophet Sulaiman was standing on the top balcony of his palace. So he can keep an eye on all the workers that were working and busy. Animals, jinns, insects, and humans. He told no one is allowed to come up here. And then right away he sees a very handsome person with very shiny clothes, beautiful clothes, walking up. He said, how dare you come here without my permission? The angel of death responded, I usually go to places without taking any permission. Hazrat Sulaiman understood. Are you the angel of death? So from here you understand that angel of death goes everywhere without the permission except one house. That when Rasulullah was on, his head was on the lap of Bibi Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, and he was in the house of Bibi Sayyidah, the angel of death was knocking on the door. Remember the masayib that we recite, that someone knocks on the door, Janab Sayyidah says, go away, my father is not feeling well. A few more knocks on the door, she repeats the answer. Rasulullah wakes up and he says, this is one house that even angel of death has to take the permission to come inside. He doesn't go anywhere. He goes anywhere he wants to without permission. But to your door, O Sayyidah, he's seeking the permission. That's the respect of the house of Janab Sayyidah. But what happened to the house of Sayyidah? Prophet Sulaiman said, are you the angel of death? He said, yes, I have come to take your soul. Hazrat Sulaiman said, okay, give me permission to make wasiyat to my people. Angel said, there's no time. He said, okay, please let me lay down. I'm standing. He said, there's no time. So how do you intend on taking my soul while I'm standing? Don't worry about it. You continue standing by your cane and I will extract your soul and you won't even realize it. And that's how a rich Nabi whose death takes place while he continues on standing on the porch, on the balcony, on the top porch of his palace. People thinking, because nobody's allowed to come up here, people thinking that Sulaiman ﷺ is just standing there. The ayat mention only when a termite ate the cane, Hazrat Sulaiman fell, people realized that he has left this world. So therefore, if you are poor, look at the seerah of Hazrat Ibrahim ﷺ. If you are rich, look at the seerah of Hazrat Sulaiman ﷺ. And this is only done through the ma'rifat. If you have the ma'rifat, only then you will be able to understand both of these stories. But remember, as I said, the angel of death takes no permission, requires no permission. He goes wherever he wants to, whenever he wants to. And he continues on knocking the door without any delay. Once, Prophet of Islam, Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he came to Bibi Fatma Zahra salamullah alayha, who was in labor at that time before the birth of Imam Hussein. She said, "Oh Baba, the baby in my womb makes me sad. When I take water in my hands to perform the wudu, I sometimes hear the sound, Ana atushan, that I'm thirsty. Sometimes I hear the sound, Ana uryan, I'm without any clothes. And sometimes I hear the sound, Ana suhqan, that my bones and my ribs have been broken." Prophet said, "O Fatima, this is your son who will be martyred unjustly by the people of my ummah." Janab Sayyidah, upon hearing this, becomes restless. She said, "Why would they be killed?" He said, "Because the grudge that they will have." Janab Sayyidah says, "Would you not stop them? This is your ummah." Rasulullah said, "I won't be there at that time." Then she says, "Will Ali be there at that time to stop them?" He said, "No, Ali won't be there either." So will Hassan be there to go ahead and protect and save his younger brother? He said, "No, Hassan will not be there either." And she said, "Then I will walk out. Even if I have to walk out and remove my hijab, I will walk out to go ahead and stop these people from doing this crime to my son." Rasulullah said, "Oh Fatima, you won't be there either." Janab Sayyidah cried out loud by saying, "If I won't be there, then who will weep for my son? Who will be there for my son?" Rasulullah responded, "There will be people who will accompany Hussein, the 72 in Riwayat, or 130, or however many the number was. These Bahattar will be there who will accompany Hussein, and they will sacrifice their lives along with Hussein. And then there will come an ummah who will weep for Hussein. They will arrange majalis for your son." She said, "I promise to Allah that I will not enter Jannat until each one of these people have entered with me." Bibi Sayyidah, that's why she comes to your majalis. That's why she's present in your majalis. This is our aqidah, that whenever we have a majlis azam, tonight also is a majlis for the Eisal-e-Thawab of a marhuma, that whenever we have a majlis, Janab Sayyidah comes to Farsh Azab. The story of a lady from Najaf, that she would go visit the grave of her son who had passed away in Wadi Salaam. The grave was that Qabristan in Najaf, which is adjacent to the Rosa of Amirul Mu'mineen. This lady would go to the grave of her son. But the first 10 nights of Muharram, she would not go visit the grave of her son. She would only go to the qabr of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. She said, "One time after Muharram, in these first 10 nights, I did not go to the grave of my son as usual, and I went to the grave of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam Hussein, and I was given pursa to Janab Sayyidah." He said, "When I came to the grave of my own son after the Ashura, I saw that there was a lady sitting on the grave. I said to that lady, that, oh lady, why are you here? Maybe you have mistaken. This is the grave of my son and not the grave of your loved ones, because this is the mark of my son's burial, and so on and so forth. As she was saying this lady removed the veil and she said, I am Fatima. You were visiting my son Hussein for the first 10 days. For the past 10 days, you were visiting my son, and I was here visiting your son because you were doing that honor to me, and I wanted to give this honor to you. ألا لعنة الله القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and ability to follow the commands and teachings of Ma'sumin alayhi salatu wassalam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and ability to follow the footsteps and the teachings of Ma'sumin. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of our weighted Imam and make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Please recite a Surah Fatiha and 3 times Surah Ikhlas for Marhuma Sukana Dhalla, as well as Marhumin Mohsen Sher Ali Ladak and Marhum Bashir Mir Ali. Surah Fatiha and 3 times Surah Ikhlas. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. قل هو الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. متوجه زيارة.
السلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم زيارة وارث. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونحيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلحمات ثيابها، وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين، وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرذي الزكي الحادي المهدي، وأشهد أن أئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والأروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا، وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سن وأمري لأمركم مؤتبئ. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد، السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سميت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأوداءه، السلام عليك يا أولياء الله وأحباءه، السلام عليك يا أسفياء الله وأوداءه، السلام عليك يا ابن أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصح، السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله، بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم، وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم، وفزتم فوزا عظيما، فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس بن أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين، السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي، فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المحامي الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل، والحقق الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليكم جميعا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء وبعيد المدى، السلطان أبا الحسن مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب الأسر والزمان، سيدي الأمان الأمان الأمان، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا وجليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم ارزقنا في الدنيا زيارة الحسين وفي الآخرة شفاعة الحسين، واحشرنا تحت لواء الحسين بحرمة محمد وآل محمد برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.